Today is Thursday, and right now our conversation is a Justice Thursday conversation, which is on family matters. Divorce. The do's and don't. Don't divorce, but should you divorce? Talk to Advocate LEAH KIGUATHA. She is a specialist on child and family law in the country. Wakili, good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
You keeping well?
Yes.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Asante. It's good to be here. Yeah.
Ni mambo ya kuvunja familia.
Nikapendi sana.
Sijui tunaongelea nini.
Unajua nini? Wewe unaongea divorce kabla hujaongea marriage.
It starts with marriage.
So you umeenda mbali. You're asking a divorce. Why marry in the first place?
Ndoa ikivunjika. Why don't you welcome the guest with the day's proverb, City?
Right. This is a family proverb. If you steal while carrying your son on your back, you teach him how to steal.
City, start by reminding us where the proverbs are from this week.
Eric,
the Union.
The Comoros. Comoros is ni island, baba. Okay? Kuna kitu inaitwa archipelago. Okay? This island, this union that we refer to, has a total of 4 islands. All right? Now, somebody say, once you mention the 4 islands, well, okay, there's Grand Comoros, there's Monieli, there's Anjuan, and there's Mayotte. The capital is called
Moroni.
Sorry.
Moroni. Yes. I mean, when I say Moroni, you may hear Muhoroni. It is not Muhoroni.
Moroni.
Moroni. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
And
mambo yote,
kabisa. It was a French colony, kitambo. But then that changed in 1975. Waliona hiyo kitu. Yeah, I was ID sana. But the population, see, they're not that many. There are just 1 million people. Yes.
1 million.
One.
In all those islands.
1 million total 1 million people.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
The island we spoke of previously had a population of 539 or something.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
I know we Kenyans are used to being 50 million, so you were 52 million, so you were 58 million. Yeah, but there are people who are happy with their 1 million.
They're 1 million.
Yes.
Today's proverb?
Yes, today's proverb. If you steal while carrying your son on your back, you will teach him how to steal.
If you
Steal
while carrying your child or your son on your back,
yes,
you will teach him
to steal.
to steal.
Because he's an observer participant. You may not take anything, but he's there while you are engaged
Watching.
in your nefarious activities.
Wakili, what's your interpretation of this proverb?
My interpretation is, I think, the literal. If you will teach your child, you'll teach your child how to steal. So we have to be very careful what we do generally and what we do in the presence of the next generation. Yeah, I think it's true. And yeah, we have to be careful around our children. We pass it on, we pass things on. Unless there's a deeper interpretation that I'm missing.
The interpretation that you have preferred is your interpretation, and it is the correct interpretation.
And it's deep enough.
It's profound enough. Do not worry. It doesn't require further depth. This one is good enough.
Okay.
Okay. Wakili, so you are a specialist in child and family law.
Yes.
There's such a law.
Yes.
Okay.
There are laws that touch on families. The Constitution says things about families.
Yes.
So there are, families are affected by the law in different ways. And so, some people won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, but some people will. And so in my farm, we do real estate as well. But
Okay.
the bulk of our work
Is on
child law and family law.
How do you specialize in this?
How do you specialize? I think it's preference. It's based on preference. When we do our law degrees, we do all, we do mainly an overview of many laws, but then when you get into practice, you can decide. Do you want to do environmental law? Do you want to do family law? Do you want to do commercial law? So there are so many ways you could practice law. And so you decide, or it chooses you. I think in my case, it chose me. I don't know if I set out to become a family lawyer. In the university, there was a course called Children and the Law. I always tell people that I did not do children and the law. I was going to become a commercial lawyer. And then, that changed. I eventually ended up teaching children and the law, and I've done a lot of children cases and family law cases generally.
So how did it find you? Because you say...
How did it find me?
It found you.
It did.
Want to be found also.
It
so
did.
How do they position themselves so that they can be found?
No, it found me. It just was relentless. I remember a season of my life where I changed jobs, and I was going to be doing a little bit of family law and a lot of real estate conveyancing law. But people still kept, even from my friends from college doing other specializations, anytime they had somebody say they have a family law problem, they'd send them to me. So they'd come to me, I'd do what I can, or hand them over to somebody else. But then when I then started my own practice, I stopped, handing people over to other people and started to do the work myself. So that's why I say it followed me, found me. It found me and followed me. And I've done it for many years.
And you thrived in it.
I've thrived, yes.
So then, when people think of, family law and all, maybe you think towards the end or at that point when the family is actually just breaking up. But do you deal with family law cases when there's no issue of divorce?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So take us from the whole spectrum.
The happiest part of family law that I do is adoption. Adoption of children, where we form families. We help form families. That's happy law. It's law that's fun law to do. So we do adoption, we do guardianship of children. In that case, there is nobody really. We are, securing families, getting families together. We do estate planning. At that point, you're trying to think through your wealth and the best way to structure it so that it benefits your family. We also do. Then now, there are the non-contentious aspects of family law, and then now when there is contention, sometimes then you come in. So even when we do probate and succession and inheritance, it doesn't always become a fight. Sometimes it's very straightforward, very collaborative. It's also happy law. It's sad because you've lost somebody, but you're coming in to settle issues and to make sure that the property passes on and stops being in the name of the person who passed on in a quiet and an agreeable way. So there's that. There are collaborative aspects of family law, and even when there are problems, you can still make it collaborative. When people are breaking up, if they decide really they can't try anymore, they've tried their best, you can agree to co-parent amicably and come up with a parental responsibility agreement, a co-parenting plan that's amicable and collaborative. And also, if there is a breakup, you can agree to divide the property in ways that are, are collaborative. In fact, you can even there are commercial aspects of family law. So, for example, when you're purchasing property, you can decide, how do I purchase this property? How do I have this property registered? Or how do I acquire this asset in a way that is going to be beneficial to my family? So there are two sides. There is collaborative aspects, and then there are aspects which are then become, confrontational sometimes.
So not all divorces are acrimonious and confrontational.
Not all divorces. You can actually do an amicable. Divorce. Now, our law doesn't quite allow you to do 100% amicable divorce. You can't hold hands, go to the court. Okay, well, not hold hands. You can't walk over to the courts together and tell the court, we want you to. Yeah, we've agreed to break up. And we want you to dissolve our marriage. We've agreed. We can't agree to
Really?
You can't agree. Yeah,
Really?
You can't agree. You can't, not yet.
Why?
But you're acting surprised. But remember, a few years, was it last year or the year before? There was a proposal, there was a bill to allow for people to come in and say we are done.
Yeah.
And it was shut down in
So
Parliament.
what does the law currently say?
Yeah, it was shut down.
In Parliament.
Yeah, it was shut down, yeah. What the law currently says is that the law gives on one hand and takes away. So before 2014, you would have to really prove a matrimonial offense. Say the person has been cruel, the person has been adulterous, the person has, done this and that to me, and that's why I want out.
Abandoned.
Yes, abandoned, deserted. But in 2014, the law changed and introduced something that's called irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. All right. But then what it did is that it went on to define irretrievable breakdown of the marriage to mean there has been adultery, there has been, cruelty, and so on and so forth. But then it also says if you have lived apart for more than 2 years, then, that's one of the ways in which you can say that the marriage has irretrievably broken down. So right now, you don't have to prove a matrimonial offense in the way that it used to be in the past. But on the other hand, you can't agree. You can't outrightly agree. There was a proposal to allow people to agree, but then, it was not, it didn't see the light of day.
So, if two people have agreed to come together in marriage, you didn't bring in the law when you were coming together. Why do you have to come to the law? Because I think, well, no, really. If you got married at the AGs or whatever, and you got the piece of paper, which then becomes your, what's that thing called?
Got to buy a certificate.
Thank you. The marriage, the marriage certificate. That's really the most that you will come in contact with the law when you're getting married.
Well,
really, because when you're doing the whole thing, you get the certificate at the end of the ceremony, etc., right? You don't see a lawyer to say, bring us together. You don't sit before a judge and say, shall you? No, you sit before, if you got married in church, it's the pastor who has
who is licensed under the law.
If you get married in an Islamic setting, it's the sheikh who does the thing or whatever. They're licensed by law to do that. You don't come in contact with the court,
and you're not questioned.
And you're not questioned.
Why did you choose this one person?
Actually, you're questioned before you actually get to the point where you're saying all those things.
Yeah, if you go through the counseling and all of that, and they read the banns of marriage in church, etc., etc. But what I'm saying,
but it's not a step on the law.
No, it isn't, because what Wakili is saying here is that in this case, you can't just come and say, well, in the way in which we came together and said we love each other, etc., etc. You cannot now come and say, we are not doing again. On your own. The law suddenly now will not allow you. Why?
There's a process. You see, the marriage. In the first place, marriage is, the Constitution says something about marriage. The marriage is a legal. It's a legal status. It's a legal process. It's a legal status. Whether you're married or not married is a legal thing. The people who do the marriage are, they are licensed under the law, under the Marriage Act. Even when you do a customary marriage, now you're required to register it under the Marriage Act.
True.
So the law has, it's playing a behind the scene role, but it does play a role.
Recognizing
the kind of marriage and the kind of marriage you celebrate, and whether your marriage is legal is a legal issue. And there is a process. There is a process for conducting a marriage, so that even customarily, even in our customs, you just didn't walk into somebody's house and you were declared married. There was customary law that says now you're married, or says you're not quite married. So there is a law. There are laws that determine whether you're married or not, and there is a process. And the same way, the law says this is how you get married. It's the same way the law says this is the procedure for dissolving your marriage.
What Ndu is raising here is customary, religious, civil. At no point are you asked why.
Yeah, true.
Right?
That's true. Yeah,
it is not a precondition that, one of the questions that the law requires before this person signs your certificate, they'll ask you, why, Eric, have you chosen so
this
and
person.
so, right? But when you want to break it, the first question and the major question is the why.
Yeah, true. And I think because there's a societal goal, marriage is considered to be the foundation of family in most societies, and family is considered to require special protection. It's considered the fundamental unit of society, and therefore, all society derives from families, and for that reason, all over the world, there are laws to protect, to create, and to dissolve that union. Yeah, but I see your point. Like nobody asks you why. At the point, hopefully your priest should ask you, or your imam. But I don't know if they ask you, it's not a legal issue.
It's not a legal.
You know what I mean? Yeah, they don't have a legal requirement.
Yeah,
there's no legal requirement to ask you the why. But at the point of dissolution, they want to know why.
City. Your fundamental questions to ask.
Yes. One, would it be advisable for people to be taken through salient aspects of the law regarding marriage? Because in the absence of marriage, there will be no divorce. Yes, you go through the religious processes, the counseling and everything that goes with it. But what about the matters that, one, would be admissible if you wanted to institute an annulment of that particular marriage, so that people know, as you're getting married, part of what you're being told are these things, so this is what ought to happen. If you're married to another person and you haven't left them, you can't marry this other one. That sort of thing.
All those kind of things.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. And in fact, I have been invited to churches many times. There is a particular church in this city that part of their premarital counseling class is you get a lawyer in, and the lawyer talks about the laws of marriage, and what happens in case things don't work out. Of course, the idea behind Christian marriages is that until death. But the reality is, the reality, as is that people do break up, and so this church has taken a bold move, and they've invited me several times to their pre-marital counseling class to speak to people about what the law says.
How do the couples take it? I mean, at this point, we're happy, we are in love, we're talking about starting our future together.
I have to wonder whether it's just the same way the advice that's given on your wedding day by all these elders. You sometimes you have to wonder if people are listening. Number one, because love, the effect of love.
What are they actually telling you?
The aunties who come and tell you this cake, it was flour.
And there's always the question of, are you listening?
Yeah, sure, at that point, no.
Yeah, and then also, of course, then you also speak about the processes that are required for, before they can actually, tie the knot. So, people are actually taking that conversation at that level before people get married. So that you talk about, the implications. It's not just about divorce, it's the implications, the pros and cons of entering into this legal relationship, because it's a legal relationship. It's an institution. It's a relationship, but it's also very much a legal institution. Yeah.
What are the don'ts of divorce?
I think the first don't of divorce is even just don't get married if you have doubts. Because many people come to me. It's a very interesting thing. Sometimes there are things you can't possibly foresee, of course, because life is life. But often you ask somebody, what happened? Tell me the story. And, and when you say it, tell it to me from the beginning. Many people say, I saw red flags from the get-go, but I ignored them. So I think for me, the first don't is marriage is very serious. It's very intense. It's very, it can be complicated. So my first don't is not the don't of divorce. It's the don't get married if you have doubts and if you're unsure.
Should people get married when they're in love?
No, that's not a legal question.
No.
And I was in fact, I was thinking, based on our earlier conversation about, nobody asks you why. And maybe the reason nobody asks you why is because everyone would say the same answer. The assumption is that you're getting married because you're in love.
Is that really the right time for you to get married?
So what should happen?
Well, if you're in love...
Break up first and then get married.
No. The love that I speak of is the dramatized love, which has a lot of euphoria to it. You are not in the right state of mind to actually make such a serious decision.
But then, in terms of, how far you can control human action, the idea of human liberty and freedom is that, there are things you can't tell people not to do.
Why not?
Because they are human. Because they are human.
In fact, I agree with
that's
what you're saying.
That's the idea behind liberty, dignity. There are certain rights that are inherent in you.
Unalienable. But you see, the very fact that they're human is the reason why they must be told. Because of the way we are wired, the way we were manufactured, we have certain leanings. We forget things. We change. We are subject to all these things. So again, as you correctly put it, you have rights, but it is for that very reason that certain things must be brought into a discussion. Because really, why is it, for instance, that we have a legal age? Legal means you are allowed to do certain things when you get to that age. Why? Because we understand that developmentally, before that point in time, your decision-making process may seem sound to you. But they are more immediate, and the long-term consequences don't actually feature. As you develop and as you grow and as your brain matures, your capacity to take matters beyond the immediate grows with you, experientially, but also just the factor of the brain and growing, the neurons in it connecting and doing what they're supposed to do. That's what actually happens. Now, we understand these things, and that's why we put that. Now, when it comes to the state of mind you should be in when you make such a lasting decision, because there are very, very few decisions that are as important as that few.
Yeah, true.
And the consequences of that union are usually very, 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 very dire. So the thought process that goes into it should be equally serious.
True.
We take more time and more caution when you want to buy land. And land you can sell and buy another one. And then here...
Contracting to somebody you're not even related to.
See, even at that point when you're making land, there's something else that's also driving your decision making.
Yes.
We assume that it's a rational decision, but not in all cases.
It isn't. It isn't.
And here we are saying that because of this moment where you have all this kind of good feelings about this person and you can see a bright future ahead, and you have been courting for some time, that your mind is still...
No, you're not in the right state of mind. In fact, the argument seems to be that is a good time to get married, if I were to flip it. You know why? This thing is so serious and there are so many hurdles ahead. Don't think too hard. Just get married. And then as you move along, you will deal with those things as you move along. But you need this state of mind to be in to be able to take that step. I mean...
Okay. So, Siti, is your argument then that we should have like a minimum number of months or years for courtship before the decision is made?
Actually, that's where the rights issue comes in. Someone will tell you, what do you mean? If you need 2 months, you take 2 months. I need a month. The truth of the matter is this. If you look at the data involving marriages, those that have been made in haste tend to end quicker than those that have gone through certain processes before people actually make that decision.
Actually, last year I participated in a family law conference at Strathmore University, and there were, people from diverse areas of society speaking about family law, and Hindu marriages have the least instances of divorce, and most Hindu marriages are arranged. Yeah, so there may be a point. I don't know if you can legislate
taken you all
it.
your life to know that you will get married one day, and the person has been determined.
I don't know if you can legislate it, but but that's an interesting point. It's an interesting point because, that for me was a big take home, and
Okay.
that that the Hindu marriages, which are mostly arranged, not all of them, of course, are arranged, have the least incidences of divorce. Now, I don't know if the research went further to find out, is it that there are fewer Hindu marriages than, say Christian marriages or customary marriages?
There's a whole social structure around it, the marriage, how they go about it, how they live, how the family is structured. See, we are we have been inducted into the Western concept, which some argue are biblical, where you and your wife form a unit, and that nuclear unit is what is fundamental. Whereas some of the marriages we speak of, yes, you are married, but you are part of a community. So the very institution you have is also part of that community.
Maybe the question should be whether any of them would like to get divorced, if given free will.
If given the
They had the
opportunity to make a
liberty.
decision on their own,
Actually,
you might be surprised at the answers that you would get.
attached to those marriages are also suicide rates. If you want to look at the data about some of those marriages as well.
Yeah.
Wakili, the other don'ts, because you've said the number one is
Don't be
if
married.
you are in doubt, don't get into it. What else?
I think the other don't is if you're already in the marriage and you're experiencing trouble, don't do a shotgun divorce. Don't immediately jump into divorce. Explore counseling. I think we don't use counseling enough in this country. I think first explore counseling. I would say use professional counselors and use therapy to try and resolve it, because the fallout is usually very painful. It's very grave. There are children involved, many people involved. So if you can explore counseling, explore that. If you have, a community of faith that you can try and approach and see if they can help, try that. Try that first, I think, rather than rush right into it and just want to call the whole thing off.
So
And the Marriage Act actually does recognize that and says, people should explore reconciliation, dispute resolution, do mediation, seek counseling. The Act actually says that the court can adjourn your case for 6 months, require you to go, which is
To
usually
continue living in.
to try and explore.
So like court
to
annex
try and explore.
mediation
You
can
see,
actually
the thing
happen
is,
in marriage.
mediation is tricky because you see, the thing with mediation is that you can only come back with an agreement, and you can't come back with an agreement to divorce. The law doesn't allow it, so it can only come back. You can only come back with a decision to get back together, or a decision where you say we have tried and we are not able to. Let's go on with the divorce. But you're not allowed to come back and say we
have agreed to divorce.
Yeah.
We can just come back in a disagreement.
You can only come back with a disagreement. We haven't been able to resolve it,
So
or
then
we
the-
have decided to reconcile. But you're allowed, there is provision for exploring. And then if that doesn't work, then the court will dissolve your marriage. I do find that courts are of the standard principle is that marriage is voluntary. It's a voluntary union. You get into it voluntarily, and if you want out, you can't be tied down, if you really, if you want out. So ordinarily, if the courts see that you've tried and it's not working, they'll release you from that union. There are many, many decisions which say you can't tie down somebody to an institution with no relationship.
Okay, one reads of certain marriages that are literally contractual, as in these are the tenets that we will be following in this union. And some even specify the number of years. So, yes, I see you smile. Do we have such provisions in this country?
No, we don't. You are allowed to get into a prenup, for example. It's there's freedom. You decide what you want to
that
do.
freedom, because what if I just want to get married for 10 years?
You could do it, but what the question is can
it
you bring that
recognized?
agreement to the court and say we are contracted for 10 years. The contract
The
is
tenure is over.
a fraction of
Subject
time.
to renewal,
Time
but
has
for
run
now
out.
it is over.
Time has run out. Get us out of here. Not quite. The law is not quite there. The agreement that is provided in the law, and I haven't seen many people use it. Maybe because of the way we are socialized, is that you can agree to live apart. You can do a written agreement to live apart for 1 year, bring it to the court, register it with the court, and then after 1 year, come back and tell the court we still do not want to get back together. Determine determine our situation. And, yeah, but I haven't seen it used that much. People don't usually come and say, let's do a separation agreement and register it with the court.
What do people do? They
common.
just start living
People
apart.
just live apart, and then one of them files for divorce.
Okay. Where does alimony kick in? And for the arguments that come against alimony is that, look, we came here as two independent parties come together, then one has to... Previously, a lot of men fell under the responsibility of alimony, but now, more recently, we're seeing that women also contribute to the payment of it.
Yeah.
How does that work and why?
The way the law works is that either with equality under the Constitution, either party, either the wife or the husband, can be made to pay alimony.
Which
or
is what exactly?
It's spousal maintenance. It's to help the other party. It's especially in situations where, one person was really financially dependent on the other one. The court can make orders for you to keep supporting the other person for a certain number of years, or until they remarry, or those sorts of things. But let me tell you that in Kenya, it's usually not a good conversation to have with clients, because courts don't give that much money. It's usually, even when the one party is super wealthy, most of the decisions have said, a spouse is not an ATM that you come to and ask for money. You should be able to support yourself. So it's usually, when somebody wants alimony, it's a very tricky situation, which is why I think the best thing to do is, if you think you will need alimony, especially if one of you decides you're the stay-home parent, you're the one who is going to stay home and take care of the kids, it might be a good idea to do either a post-nap or a post-nuptial agreement or a prenuptial agreement on that aspect. Because if you wait to get it from the court, I feel like, because we are a country where people work so hard, everyone works hard. Everyone is hardworking. So when you come, when you come and you're asking that, I'm unable to work or haven't been able to work.
When the court wonders.
And people say, oh, I hope I get, a magistrate, a woman magistrate, or I get a man magistrate. They'll understand. But that magistrate is overworked. They have so much work. They can't imagine how hard it is to make a living. And you're asking to have some reprieve,
to get it easy
from that. Yeah, but then also alimony or spousal maintenance is different from child support. So in the divorce you can ask for alimony, but then if you want children are supported. Basically, the courts are of the the law requires that you support your children. So support of children is a much easier conversation. It is, the courts will require people who don't want to support their children to support their children. But when it comes to spousal maintenance after the marriage has broken down, it's usually a very difficult conversation, and people don't get a lot of money from the courts. And even when they do, it's even hard to enforce. I find that, they basically, and there was a case where, a woman was ordered to pay spousal maintenance to her spouse. You can imagine her shock. She immediately appealed, and the Court of Appeal didn't uphold that order for maintenance. So spousal maintenance is very tricky.
It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
This child support, is it shared? Is it a shared responsibility that the two parents are equally contributing to the maintenance, to the support of the children?
Yeah, it is. It's shared. It's shared. The equality of it is nuanced. It's not an absolute, split the child into two sort of situation, but it's shared. Every party has to. Everyone has
something.
to. Everyone has to contribute something. And I find that what courts find have found in practice, what happens is that the courts will say the law is concerned with 5 things: food, clothing, shelter, education, and medical cover for the children. There could be holidays, entertainment, all these other, things that we do for our kids. And that the court will not consider, because the law says food, clothing, shelter, education, and medical. So one parent will be told to take care of certain of those things. The other parent will be told to take care of certain of those things.
But in the cases that we read, and those that we see coming out of divorce courts, is where, or even it's where one parent is going to court seeking that the other parent pays an X amount to maintain the lifestyle of the children, because we were together, these children were used to this, they were going to this kind of school, they were used to having this kind of holidays, they were used to this kind of level of medical care, this level of education, and you're saying that the other parent is the one to pay to maintain that standard.
Yes. So, of course, the parent who goes to court is the parent who feels that the status quo is not working in their favor. They've left, they've probably have the children, they are housing the children, feeding the children, then there are all these other bills to be paid. So ordinarily, the courts will say the person living with the children should provide them with food, clothing, and shelter. Okay? And then the other person should provide school fees and medical. Now, on those issues, and sometimes, because you are taking care of the children, if you're the one living with them, the court may say, let the other person take care of school fees and medical, and also give you some money monthly to help you, because, you're
with
taking care of many bills. Now, the court can't force you to take your children to a certain school. The court cannot force you to keep a medical cover, that you had an expensive medical cover and you have to keep that. But the court will consider, are you punishing the children for the breakdown of the family? If your children were going to a high costs international school, and now upon the breakdown of the marriage, you're saying, I can only afford
Public
a public school, the court will think, are you punishing the children? And the court will say, give me your payslip or give me your earnings, and let's look and see whether if you were able to afford it before. Of course, economies of scale and things adjust a little bit, but the court will try and see whether are you trying to punish the children. So especially with schools, the courts will sometimes say, continue to pay school fees at the children's current school, or they have moved to another school that is almost the same school fees as their old school. Continue to pay fees at that school, because even if the court can't force you to keep your kids in a certain school or provide medical cover for a specific in a specific medical cover, you shouldn't also be punishing the children for the breakdown of the relationship.
Do we see increasing numbers of divorce in Kenya?
Yes, we do. And I think it's not that, well, my view is that there are many reasons. But sometimes the reason people suggest is that, we just get tired more easily and we move on. But remember, now there are more formal marriages. Many people have to formalize. Traditionally, our grandmothers didn't live. They stayed there, and wife number 3, number 4, number 5 was brought in, and there was no divorce. You see, but now the dynamics of society has changed. People are saying, no, I'm not going to stay through wife number 2, 3, 4. And how do we deal with this? We dissolve the marriage,
You're saying that many traditional societies didn't have divorce.
I think there were divorces, but there were less. Because if you enter into a polygamous setup from the get-go, and there will be other people coming in, then you might not leave. But then if you enter into a monogamous marriage and somebody else is brought in, you decide, what do we do now?
Do you determine that the marriage you're in is monogamous?
Before you get married. Before you get married.
Therein lies the tale. You see, I am thinking, the institution of marriage as we understand it and the evolving nature of it and everything around it, if you were to understand it, what would you say, because this is something you interact with regularly, the cases that you've heard, what category do they fall under? What is it that brings people to you? What is it that makes them want to divorce?
In most cases, it's infidelity and cruelty, both physical and emotional. And then the third category is abandonment or desertion, where somebody has walked off, has been gone for many years. And
I wonder, in all these cases, does the court require proof?
Yes, the court requires proof, but the proof is not proof beyond reasonable doubt.
It's just basic
It's
proof.
not proof beyond a shadow of doubt. it's proof on a balance of probabilities. So once you establish that it is probable that what you're saying is true, then the court will dissolve the marriage.
So, like, what would constitute emotional cruelty?
It's actually even defined in the, in the Protection Against Domestic Violence Act. There is, it talks about, the sort of the language, demeaning language that you use against the other party. There is, financial, there can be financial abuse. Treating somebody in a way that you are making them to be deprived of a livelihood. There, emotional cruelty there are actually definitions in law, and even when it doesn't meet the definition, just the court listening to the person and what they went through in the marriage, they can, determine that was cruelty.
Hata nipatiangi chakula nikiingia kwa nyumba, hata akinipatia ugali imepoa,
ama ile pesa ananipatia hata itoshi siku moja na nataka ikae kwa mwezi.
Those kind of things. It's those kind of stories.
It can be subjective, but you see, at the end of the day, the point is that marriage is a voluntary union. Yeah. So you need to provide reasons. You need to prove on a balance of probabilities, not beyond a shadow of doubt, and not even beyond reasonable doubt. You need to provide some proof. You need to show that you did take some steps to try and resolve the issues that had a reason, but it's all on a balance of probabilities because overall it's voluntary.
The question of whether we understand the people we've chosen to live with or to marry vis-a-vis our reasons for getting married, you put them on a weighing scale. What trumps the other? Because again, we are back to I'm emotionally entangled and I feel that this should end in a union. And then there is me and there's my expectations and whether they actually understood. Because the fact that people have agreed to live together as they do now and probably get married, is there an opportunity in your line of work to actually get them to explore, even as they come to you, just the reasons why they got into the marriage and what the expectations were? Because you think you're of one mind and that you are saying the same thing and you mean the same thing, but clearly that there is divorce and that it increases. Clearly,
Yeah, and that's why my one of my don'ts was don't rush out of it. Seek therapy. Seek to do some work. And I know it's hard. And sometimes people are in very dire situations. Of course, if there is violence, for example, get out. But yeah, in terms of understanding who you got married to, whether it's whether somebody else would withstand the same treatment, I think is more of a therapy, psychologist issue as opposed to a legal.
Just a little bit of infidelity kidogo tu ndio inazusha.
Tunaenda kotini.
Kidogo tu.
Wakili, in 20 seconds, what do you tell people who are in that space right now?
Okay. If you're in that space right now and you're done, try and agree. You can agree. In terms of how to co-parent the children, you can enter into a parental agreement and it's enforceable legally. In terms of the property, if you share the property before you dissolve the marriage, there are tax benefits. You don't pay stamp duty on property that you're transferring while you're still married. So if you can agree on the property, agree on the children, get legal support if you need to, it makes for a less acrimonious divorce down the line, if that is possible. Because then the divorce, you can't agree. You have to go through the process. But if you've agreed on these other issues, try and have as possible, as amicable as possible, a process before you get to the divorce.
LEAH KIGUATHA is an advocate, specialist in child and family law. She's been our Justice Thursday guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.